All right, we made it through that long slog of typography. I know there's a lot we covered, but now we're going to talk about a single component, a pretty famous or maybe infamous component called the Jumbotron. So I'll just show you what it is before I discuss why it might be infamous. It is a lightweight, flexible component for showcasing hero unit style content. Okay, under documentation, you can find this under components. And remember, these are all alphabetical, and I didn't want to just go in default alphabetical order because it doesn't really make sense to teach things in alphabetical order. So it's under Jumbotron. And the reason I'm showing you this now, it combines what we've already learned. We've learned buttons, we've learned headings, we've learned the lead class and text muted and containers. And if you scroll down, it all kind of comes together in this. This is a Jumbotron here. So it's a way of calling it extra attention to featured content or information. And you could leave it styled as it is. In this case, it looks like this. And this is a terrible thing to do, in my opinion, unless you're just making something very quick, a dashboard for internal purposes, something the world will never see. Then sure, go ahead and do this. But what I've seen a lot of websites in the past, especially nowadays, you don't see it much, but in the past, a lot of lazy developers add Bootstrap, make a Jumbotron on their front page, use the default nav bar up top, and everything looks the same. The same colors, the same gray background, the same fonts. That's terrible. So I'm going to show you how to customize it a little bit, but let's just start by making a Jumbotron. So I have a basic jumbotron.html file. There's nothing in it aside from including Bootstrap. And I'm going to start by first adding my container. Now, if I didn't add a container, I'll show you what that would look like. I'm going to start now by adding a Jumbotron div. And inside of that, we can add an H1 and just say, I don't know, we can copy what they're saying. Hello world, like that. And by default, this is what we get. So here's my container. If I don't add that container, the Jumbotron just goes all the way to the edge, which is okay too. And I'll show you something involving that in just a bit. There's a second Jumbotron I'm going to make. So we get this gray color. I'm not a fan of it. I would never leave that default gray personally, but it does call attention to our text. So on its own, it's not that exciting what we have right now. We can go ahead and add to our H1 class equals display1 just to make it larger. We learned that in the last video. There we go. It's a lot better already. Now we can go and add our paragraph with a class of lead. So also what we learned in the last video. So this paragraph is just to show, secondary information. So this could be whatever the name of our website is, bananas.com. And then this is our text explaining what we do. And then below that, if you wanted to, you could add an HR, which is this horizontal rule. And they've given it a margin of 4. We haven't talked about margin Y again. We will come back to all of this. But if you just want to make the exact same thing that you're seeing on the page right now, paste that in, save, we get this little divider. It's very light, not very easy to see. Then below that, you could add a plain old paragraph, which is what I'll do just to keep it consistent. And we can see the difference between a lead paragraph that goes along with our heading. This is what we do. And then here's some more information. And then often you could add a button, learn more, sign up, register, get started, whatever. And they have it as a link, which is, you don't have to do that. You could have a regular button, but if you're trying to get people to go to an about page, you could add a link. So if we just copy this, I realize I'm just copying line by line what they're doing, but I'll tweak it in just a bit. This is what we end up with. Our nice little Jumbotron. And, as I resize, everything looks good. It's responsive. Maybe instead of an H1 there or display 1, we could do a display 4. It's a little more manageable. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so that's the basics of a Jumbotron. Now I'm going to take that entire thing and duplicate it, and we can tweak it in any way we want. I'll get rid of that HR. I'll get rid of this second paragraph. And instead of button primary, let's do button, success, and change this to be sign up. And here's a different variation on the Jumbotron. Super simple, but I'll change the text. All right, here we go. I just changed it. Adopt a pet. Approximately 7.6 million companion animals enter animal shelters nationwide every year. Apply now. So here's an example of how you could use a Jumbotron. Okay, so next, before I talk about changing some of these styles, let's go back there's a second type of Jumbotron called fluid Jumbotron. And the idea here is to make a full width Jumbotron that doesn't have rounded corners. So notice I didn't address this. I said background color, but we also get rounded corners here. If you don't want that, if you want it to go all the way across the screen, you can do a fluid Jumbotron. So it's really simple. I'm going to come down here, not in a container. So notice that I have two containers and they end. Remember, a container just gives us sort of a space to work in the middle of the page with some boundaries around it. I'm not going to work in a container, and I'm going to do a Jumbotron dash fluid. And we also need to add the class Jumbotron. So just like with button, we have to do btn and btn dash whatever. We can't just do Jumbotron fluid. We also need Jumbotron, which I conveniently forgot there. That was not planned. So if we do that, and then let's go and add an H1. Let's just do the same thing, adopt a pet. I hate when that happens. Save that. You can see what we get now. It goes all the way across. Now, this is not great because our text also is all the way on the left side. So what we usually would do is add our container inside the Jumbotron to give our content a little space to make it, not right up against the edge. So that's what this looks like. Here's a Jumbotron that goes all the way across, but now we have our content sort of in the middle, roughly. And they give it display 4. Let's just do the same thing with our class lead like this. All right, so I added in some extra text, and let's do one more button down there. Okay, so here's our fluid Jumbotron. I added in a red button, a danger button, and you can see, it's just a different look. But my recommendation is to not use this default gray. So if you have a color, we'll talk about how you would change that right now, or I'll show you how to put an image back there. So let's come down and duplicate our regular, just one plain Jumbotron, a non-fluid Jumbotron. And I'm going to come in here and change this. Let's save. There it is. I'm going to change the background color of this Jumbotron. So if we wanted to just customize it with the built-in classes, like make it dark, we could do bg-dark and then text-light. And that works, and we could change this to be, instead of btn success, we could do btn, outline dash success. Like that. I actually don't really like that. Let's just go back to regular, or maybe, how about btn light? Yeah, there we go. So you could do this with the built-in colors, but what you can also do is target one of these with your own custom styles. So I could go and get rid of this and give my div with the Jumbotron class an ID of, I don't know, let's go with blue, and then come down and I'm going to make my style tag, which, just to make this easy in a video, I'm not using an external style sheet. And in here, I'm going to target blue and just set background to be, I don't know, what do we want? Let's go with, sure, just plain blue. And save. And here's my hideous blue Jumbotron. So I'll tweak this and make it look a little bit better. Okay, so I just changed the shade of the blue. I made it text white. I made my button btn outline light, and it looks like this. And then the last thing I'll show you is how to do the same thing, but use an image for the background. So I'm going to do a fluid, Jumbotron, what this whole video is about. So I'm just going to copy my fluid Jumbotron down to the bottom again. And once again, I'm going to give the Jumbotron element, this time it's the top level div, not the container, but this div, I'm going to give it an ID of, let's just do jumbo. And then down here, I'm going to select it, jumbo, and give it a background of an image. And then I'm going to do a URL for an image I find online. And I like to go to unsplash.com, especially I like it in general, but in my courses, I can get these images that are free to use for all sorts of purposes, no restrictions. Let's look for, I don't know, forest or something. So there's some trees that we could use. Sure, let's take this image here, and then I'm just gonna copy the image address, and I'm gonna paste it in right here inside of quotes, and save. And there we go. Here is our heading, or here's our Jumbotron with this nice image. I'm gonna, of course, change the text so that we end up with text white. And then I'm gonna change our button. I don't know, what would we prefer? Maybe btn info? I guess I can leave it at that. It's not perfect. But now we have an image that we're using as our background. Looks pretty good, at least for just something right out of the box. All right, so that's Jumbotron's. We're still not styling everything. If we were really making this a real website, we'd change the font probably, and some of these colors. There's a lot of things we could change. But these are Jumbotrons. They combine a lot of what we've already learned. Buttons, headings, talked about containers, the lead paragraph, and they're kind of useful. I don't use them all the time, but we're going to do some exercises next up where you will be writing some Jumbotrons. So if you want to overwrite the styles, you can target them. You don't have to use an ID, but just to make it easier, I did. And you can change their background, for example, or change their border radius if you don't want the rounded corners. And we saw two different types. Fluid goes all the way across the page, and a regular Jumbotron, which is usually in a container, as you can see here. All right, so that is Jumbotrons.